Do you like the idea of an activity tracker, but don't like the idea of having a smartwatch? Well, we've got a watch today that has all different kinds of scales on it that can help you do just that, and it's still analog. My name is Blake Buettner. I'm the managing editor of Worn and Wound.
And I'm Zach Kazan. I'm an editor at Wearability.
Today we're talking about the weird, wild, but wonderful Bell Ross BR0394 Multimeter. It's very unusual for a few reasons, but it incorporates a multitude of measurement scales on the dial to the point at which telling the time on it is almost
secondary.
Yeah. So this watch at a glance is very different from normal watches. And you and I have kind of a history of this watch because when we first saw it released, we were both kind of immediately enamored with it just because it was so ridiculous, but also like the color scheme and how it's incorporated on the dial works really, really well.
It's really cool looking. It's just really aesthetically pleasing and interesting, I think.
So this is a watch that we both liked. It kind of tracked in our own ways, but never really saw it come up for sale or listed anywhere, to the point at which we almost doubted that it was out there at all.
Yeah, it was kind of like a point of fascination immediately, because it's just like, it seemed so unusual.
Yeah, it is so unusual, and of course we don't get that many just totally unusual things. But this multimeter is different for a few reasons. Of course, it's a chronograph. It uses the 2894-2 base chronograph. It has a minute totalizer and a running seconds hand, but those are also tertiary. This watch is really about these scales and how they're brought to life, and then the timing seconds of the chronograph against which you operate those scales. So there's 3 different tachymeter scales here.
Driving, which is normal. We kind of have that. That's sort of like the standard tachymeter scale that people use in motorsport all the time. And also running and cycling.
So, and this works just like every other tachymeter. If you know the distance being covered, you can time how long it takes to cover that distance. And then when it covers that distance, you stop your chronograph and you're given the speed at which they've done it. But this also incorporates 2 other things, an azimuthmeter and a pulsometer.
It's a doctor's watch.
Too. So it's a doctor's watch. And it's got all 5 of these scales kind of jammed into the dial. And on the left-hand side of the dial, it kind of explains each of them, or at least breaks down the scale at which they are calibrated to, which is kind of a nice touch. But the colors range from these kind of greens into these blues and orange. They work together really well, though. And there's something like undeniably just amazing about this.
Does it remind you of something
that
you see almost every day?
And this is why I mentioned the activity tracker, because the Apple Watch, I think it's just the Apple Watch that has these rings, these colorful rings that you close every day as you get your stand goals, your move goals, and whatever else is in there. So this kind of has a similar appearance here with these rings. Obviously, this isn't going to track for you how much you're standing and moving around or any of that kind of thing. But if you are into track and field events or like to go on walks or runs or whatever, this is something theoretically that you could track your speed over that distance and then track your pulse and how many breaths you're taking.
I love this watch. I'm fascinated by this watch. It's so hard to read, the tiny little print, and maybe this is just my aging eyes. I don't know how practical this would really be if you actually were interested in getting a pulsometer and azimuthmeter reading, or if you were a cyclist who wanted to, track his or her speed. There are better ways to do this electronically, like with perhaps an Apple Watch.
Yes.
It's just such a curiosity. It's just such a weird thing, visually interesting, just an interesting design object. Like I said, I'm fascinated by it.
One of my favorite details about this watch is where they've put the date.
Yeah.
It's kind of in seemingly random territory between the 12 and the 1 hour marker, but it's literally the only place that they could have put it on this watch.
There's nowhere else you could.
It's almost like after they designed the dial, somebody said, we should put a date on it.
Well, that's something that Bell & Ross does a really nice job with on a lot of their watches. They have a real knack for discreetly placing that date window in a place that's kind of out of the way. It's always like a little small circle as opposed to like a rectangular window somewhere.
Or a framed window.
Yeah, not your favorite.
Yeah.
So I think that it's very discreet. You don't really even notice it among all the other stuff that's there.
So this watch, I think it's safe to say, falls into 4th watch territory.
Absolutely.
Quite firmly. This is the BR03 frame, so it's in this kind of, I don't know if I would say iconic, but like when I think of a square watch, I generally think of Bell & Ross, and this is that. It's got the screws on the side. It's a little bit large, but the lug-to-lug isn't that big either because it's a square, so it doesn't overhang on the wrist. It's actually relatively wearable. It has a pretty comfortable rubber strap. It's almost hard to judge this. It's like day-to-day on the wrist presence. It has a presence, and it's not hard to wear, but it's not like
It's not something you'd want to wear every day.
not something you'd want to wear every day, unless you just really are enamored with the colors on the dial and the style of this watch, in which case, more power to you. But this watch offers an experience on the wrist, which I think is worth something more than does it slip under my cuff with ease and that kind of thing, right? Like you judge this by a different standard.
Yeah, it's also like it's just a good old-fashioned like conversation starter. It's what I like to refer to as a watch meetup watch. This is the kind of thing that will get a lot of attention if you like bring it to your monthly, like watch meetup or Red Bar or whatever. You aren't going to see many of these out in the wild, so it will be a focal point of attention among watch nerds for sure.
This was a limited edition. 500 pieces were made. Their website currently shows it as sold out, so I imagine they're all gone. I mentioned this was a year and a half ago. So this is a watch, though, that we don't really see come up in the secondhand market. So there's like kind of a strange lore between like us around this watch and trying to find one.
I think just us. I don't hear a lot. I don't hear a lot of chatter about the multimeter.
So presumably nobody's hung around to this late in the video, and it's just us really kind of talking about this, which is fine. There's something just undeniably awesome about this watch, and I truly enjoy the experience of wearing it. Anyways, we'd love to know what you think about this watch. We'd love to know what you think about Bell and Ross in general, and let us know what you would use all these scales for, the 3 tachymeter scales, the azimuthmeter, and the pulsometer. Would this be a good 4th watch for you? 6th, 7th, 8th watch, maybe, something like that. But that is the Bell & Ross Multimeter. We'll have more of our thoughts on More Wound on this watch that we'll link down below. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. And if you enjoyed this content, please be sure to leave a like and share. It helps us out a lot. And until next time, take care.